Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Flix Busters podcast, broadcasting here on Fandom Empire. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button for all of your Flix Busters needs, along with a whole lot of really awesome content that you can find here on this channel. I'm Zach, back again here with Sean, who's got a sweet new background. I'm digging you incorporating the logo even into your background, dude. We actually had something in store for you all for this particular episode and decided to boot it within the last week. And there's a very good reason for that. And we'll get to all of that and more. But be sure to stay tuned for a very swashbuckling adventure. Am I right, Sean?
Yeah, it hurt to move those. We were getting ready to do Blade Runner, followed by Blade Runner 2049, movies we will do down the road. But when it's the 20th anniversary of Pirates of the Caribbean, which we didn't know at the time, nor did I know it was playing in theaters again, it, I don't know, just kind of sort of took the pole position.
And rightfully so. I mean, it came out in 2003, summer of 2003, and here we are, summer of 2023, and it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. To honestly say that this movie is 2 decades old makes me feel really old for one thing. But to be able to celebrate it like we're going to do on this episode is something that I'm truly looking forward to, because this is one of those films, the original Curse of the Black Pearl is one of those ones that I feel has stood the test of time. One of the best movies of this century, in my opinion, as far as the acting goes, the costumes goes, the music, the cinematography, the timelessness of it all. Like, sure, this film is based on a ride, but I think the movie itself also takes you on a pretty fun ride as well. And so to be able to celebrate it with its 20th anniversary, kind of a special edition episode, is something that I've really been looking forward to. As soon as you came up with the idea, I was 100% on board with it. And we've got some other stuff related to Johnny Depp that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some current events as well, and try to kind of give you all a really all-encompassing episode tonight. But this one is definitely going to be one for the record books, I feel like.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I might be tipping my hat here a little bit, but Zach used to say to me back in our previous projects, Phantom Fraternity comes to mind, that Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, is one of 5 movies he'll never say no to. I never really heard that expression before. I never really looked at things that way. But I can honestly say that if I had that list, Pirates would be on it. You know how much I love Star Wars, at least most Star
Sure,
Wars.
sure.
I told Jade today, like, I like this movie or love this movie more than most Star Wars movies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can name at least 5 or 6 Star Wars films right off the top of my head that I would say would not rank nearly as high as far as the point system that we have goes. We actually have 4 different criterion as far as creativity, quality, sound, and then just the overall enjoyment factor. If you're new to Flixbusters, we'll show you those scores and kind of break it all down for you when it comes time for the final score, the verdict. But we're already kind of tipping our hand when we're saying that we're going to be determining whether a certain film is a flick or a bust. That's the essence of the Flixbusters podcast. But this one, I'm pretty safely going to say we're both going to find this one to be a flick, because while it's not in my 5 anymore, it is definitely probably in like my top 7. And so if I had like a top 7 or a top 10 list, this one would be kind of alternating around the 5, 6, 7 spot. And it's one of those that I'm always going to enjoy, no matter how long it's been since I've seen it or how short it's been since I've seen it. You put it back on again, and you will not find me complaining.
So, fun fact: today was actually the first time I've watched these movies in a while, and we watched both of them, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the next week's episode, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Dead Man's Chest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and both movies are just there's nostalgia involved with it too, but like they're just incredibly well made movies. So Yeah, no, I don't think you're gonna find many busts over the next couple of weeks, but you know what? It's okay to love once in a while. God knows there's enough negativity out there. Just go to Twitter or whatever it's called.
Twitter or X or Muscopedia. I don't even know anymore.
X.
But
How sorry, I mean, how not creative is that, by the way? Do you know how many things I've seen Zach create, whether it's stuff he does professionally for work or stuff on here, that it has just is oozing with far more creativity than what they did over there. It's just I don't know, man.
if you're suggesting that I need a job at that particular establishment, I don't know how long my employment would last because apparently everything is going AI over there, anyways. But
That
I
just
do
sounds
appreciate.
like a great idea.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I do appreciate the sentiment. I would love to work full time in media, but this is a great side hustle in the meantime. Why don't we pull up the card to show everybody what we've got on the docket for tonight specifically? Because we're already about 6 or 7 minutes into the show and you don't even know what the hell is going to be going on. We're going to be doing a multiple choice question in just a second, and then we'll introduce the Flicks picks that you can submit here in the comments, or you can hit us up on our different social media pages. And then I'm going to give a very brief, like 4 to 5 minute review of Barbie because I saw it during its opening weekend. And then we'll dive into probably a good half hour of Pirates of the Caribbean. We'll give our verdict and our scores, and then we'll close this sucker out. So, Sean, what have you got for our multiple choice question for this episode?
So the multiple choice question for this episode is actually a question that came up in our household yesterday, and that was, who is your favorite Pirates of the Caribbean character that is not Captain Jack Sparrow? Which
Ooh.
actually led to a little bit of an interesting debate. My oldest son had his opinion, which definitely didn't line up with mine, and then I found out that my partner Jade, we had the same, so that was kind of cool too.
Huh.
The options are Will Turner, Barbosa, Elizabeth, Davy Jones, or other. Zach, where do you fall?
I am I'm kind of in like the A to B region, mostly because Curse of the Black Pearl is a fantastic movie and doesn't have Davy Jones in it at all. So I don't think that the entire franchise is made or broken on the back of Davy Jones. But I do think that characters like Turner and Barbosa have a certain likability to them that stands the test of time. But I will venture out on a limb and I will probably say Barbosa. I was leaning towards Will when I first saw this question, but I think I'm going to say Barbosa, and here's why. His appearance and his hinted appearance in Dead Man's Chest made me so incredibly elated. I was so excited to see that he was back. And my first time watching through the franchise, I was like, how in the heck are they going to pull this off? And then they go to credits almost as soon as you see his face. And I think I was more excited to see Barbosa for 10 or 15 seconds than I was to see most of the other characters throughout the course of the whole movie. So I think when you've got that kind of charisma to you and you carry that much weight with your personality and Jeffrey Rush's portrayal of the character, I would venture to say that Barbosa is probably my other favorite character in the franchise.
Well, guess what? We get to save a lot of time here because I agree completely. His presence in the first movie, he plays just a fantastic villain. Where if you really break down the first movie, um, especially from his perspective, early on, he's not necessarily just out to kill. Um,
No.
but like he just Jeffrey Rush, like absolutely incredible chemistry with Johnny Depp's off the charts.
Mhm.
Um, just fantastic. And yeah, in the second movie, I was there opening night, and on that episode, we'll talk about a little story about the midnight premiere for that night. Looking forward
Oh,
to it.
I can't wait. Hopefully you all tuning in can't wait either. But that is fantastic. I'm curious who your son's favorite character was though.
Turner, Will.
Okay. No, that's fair. At least it wasn't like Mr. Gibbs or somebody like that, or the monkey. So, I mean, Will
They
is a
even the
very
monkey, yeah.
fair option. Okay, I guess it's time for the other question that we have on every episode here, and this is one that you and I both take quite a bit of pride in. It's hashtag Flicks Picks. What are our picks going to be from this $15 budget? And obviously, we have to go with Johnny Depp movies. His list of appearances is just unparalleled, and his range is just amazing. And what's really funny is we've got a Pirates of the Caribbean film on every tier. So if you're just a super fan of the Pirates franchise, you could literally spend your entire $15 on just Pirates of the Caribbean and you would be fine. But then there's a lot of other great things to pick from in here, like Sweeney Todd and the Alice movies. So if you're tuning in, be sure to hit us up in the comments. Go ahead and hit us up at Flixbusters on the different social media pages. Use the hashtag FlixPicks to tell us how you would spend your metaphorical $15 on Johnny Depp films. Sean, do you want to lead off or do you want me to lead off on this one?
No, I'll go ahead. So Pirates one, like that's to me, that's the easiest one to go. So that's $5 gone just like that. And to be honest, I was never the biggest Edward Scissorhands fan. Like I know people rave about the movie, which is why I put it up in the $5 tier. I just wasn't a big fan of it. Dead Man's Chest is also in my picks, as is Public Enemies, which I love. Him and Christian Bale are just fantastic in that movie. Great cast. Problem is, that's $13 gone already. And then it came down to, do I want to go with two $1 films or am I going with a $2 film? And it basically came down to Secret Window or Once Upon a Time in Mexico. If you haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Mexico, it is fantastic. People should give it a try. But I went with Secret Window because I think his performance in Secret Window is just captivating from start to finish.
I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack for this, but I haven't seen either of those films. My wife is slowly integrating me into the world that is Johnny Depp, and she actually submitted a list as well. And I'm probably going to read off her list first, if that's okay. She did pick Edward Scissorhands, and then she had Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So that's two $5 films. And then after that, she went with Dead Man's Chest. And she's like, you know what? There's nothing in the $1 tier that I really want to spend my money on. So I'm just going to hold on to that dollar and spend 14. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine."
That's about
So
how I've felt about Pirates 5 over time, too. So.
yeah, it's fair. But that's the beauty of having that kind of range in your budget is you can spend it on really high quality stuff. And if you got a buck left over, that's fine. But yeah, that's how she spent 14 of her $15. I'm gonna spend the full 15, and I am too gonna go with Edward Scissorhands. She introduced it to me, so there's kind of like a personal factor involved in the sense that she and I watched it together, and so it's kind of something that we have in common now. But it is a pretty well made film, and I found it very enjoyable, and I definitely enjoyed it more than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm a Gene Wilder purist, and I can't suffer through that movie. I just can't. I feel like
Man, do we have a topic to talk about? Sorry to cut you off there, but I didn't I didn't know you were a Gene Wilder guy. I
oh,
noticed
I'm
some people are 50-50 on him.
no, no, no. When it comes to the world of Wonka, I'm a Gene Wilder purist. I haven't seen a whole lot of his other works, but I grew up on the Gene Wilder Chocolate Factory, and so to see this one is just one that I have a really tough time muscling through. So I'm spending $5 on Edward Scissorhands. I'm spending $5 on Curse of the Black Pearl. I'm going to spend $3 on What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I think it's a really interesting insight into the world of family, particularly when it comes to people with special needs, which is something that really resonates with me, having a relative who is on the autism spectrum. So Gilbert Grape, and then I will round it out with Murder on the Orient Express, because yes, Johnny Depp is in it, but it's also just a really good ensemble cast, and he plays his role in that really well. So Scissorhands, Black Pearl, Gilbert Grape, and Orient Express. That's my 15.
Man, $15 just doesn't bring you far in these things.
No, it doesn't because it leaves out, Fantastic Beasts. It leaves out Sweeney Todd. It leaves out the Alice movies. Like there's plenty to choose from when it comes to Johnny Depp's career.
So I got to say, I'm not the biggest fan of really any of the Willy Wonka movies. I'm not saying they're bad. I just, I definitely probably prefer the Gene Wilder one over. I just love the whole beginning and getting the golden ticket and all that.
Hmm.
And just the family aspect of it. That part resonates with me. But I got to say, man, the other day, just out of the blue, it's a movie podcast. I got to bring it up. They showed the. I don't know if the movie's just called Wonka. I believe it's supposed to be a prequel to Gene
Oh,
Wilder's.
with Chalamet.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I watched the trailer and I went, "Holy crap! I kind of want to bring my kids to go see that." That
See, I saw it and was like, "Holy crap! I can't believe they're making such a piece of shit."
and there you have it, both ends of the spectrum.
I'm sorry. I have nothing against Chalamet, and I have nothing against the way that you see the world, dude. But that is one I will wait to see on streamers. I don't know if I'm even going to spend my season pass to go see that one. If the wife really wants to see it, maybe. But I don't know if I'm going to voluntarily go catch it. But we'll see.
Zinger. Let's see what other people had to say here, man.
Yeah, for sure.
This one's taken off your Facebook, so. All right, so Steven Shinder leads things off. Ed Wood, Benny and June, Sweeney Todd, Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Guess that's a spoiler if IPC ever does top 5 Johnny Depp movies, LOL. I considered Pirates, and while the first movie might be an 8 out of 10 for me, it was hard for me to enjoy it as much on recent rewatch, given the whole story that goes with the 5th movie. I was actually kind of sad remembering how little care was taken with that one and how the first movie starts things off with promise. Yeah, I think a lot of the audience feels that way about the 5th movie. I mean, now that we know more, I certainly hope there's a time and place for them to give Jack and those characters a better send-off, and it's certainly more possible today than it was, say, a year and a half ago. But yeah, Matt Whitfield says Edward Scissorhands, Public Enemies, gotta love some love there. Donnie Brasco, Pirates of the Caribbean, On Stranger Tides, Ed Wood, and The Lone Ranger. Zach, if you haven't seen Ed Wood, you have to. And I don't know if you know much about Ed Wood or not, but he's a character. Talk about one of the worst directors of all time. It's remarkable to see. And then Chantel, it's my buddy's wife from actually elementary school and high school. So I spent $15 a little differently and paid to remove the ones I'd be okay to see go from your list. Yours was way too difficult. All right.
Oh, I see. She paid for which ones to get rid of and tried to keep the rest.
Well, as Barbosa said, that would probably send her to the plank. And I do have Mike's list here. I just had it anyways. It is right here. And he picked the following. He has it circled. Apologies, he didn't actually type it out, but he had Pirates, Dead Man's Chest, At World's End, Secret Window, The Tourist. It's almost like we grew up together watching the same movies.
Oh, of all things.
Yeah, no, this was a hard one. I think next week's is even harder though.
It could be. It could be. The next episode is all seafaring stuff to keep with the trend of the Pirates of the Caribbean double feature we're talking about. So that one is definitely going to be interesting, and we both provided a lot of input on that one. So that collaboration also excites me. But this one is definitely tough. So be sure to hit us up in the comment and use the hashtag FlixPicks on social media to let us know what you would pick for your Johnny Depp movies. I love that some people only picked like 2 or 3. And then there were some that really made their money work for them and picked like 5, maybe even 6 at times. And so that's the creativity of having a budget of $15 here on Flix Busters.
That's where I run into the issues, man, because I try to really buy into the concept. These are the only ones I'm going to see for the rest of my life. So do I really want to spend $15 on 3 movies, or do I want to spend $15 on 6 movies or 7 movies?
I mean, it depends on what you arbitrarily put in the $2 and $1 region as well, I suppose. Like if if Ed Wood was in $2 range and you put Gilbert Grape in 1, then I'd have plenty of room to pick a whole bunch of bottom feeders. But
Um,
it is what it is.
yeah. So you sir got to see Barbie. Tell
I
us about it.
did. I did. I actually got to participate in the whole Barbenheimer craze and got to see Barbie one night, and then I got to take the wife to go see Oppenheimer at noon the next day, and so I stimulated the economy a little bit when it comes to feature films, but it was definitely interesting to lead off with Barbie because of how colorful and ambitious it is. It takes an all-star cast, simply all-star cast, and they all fill their roles so incredibly well. It is very well made. It is a well-made movie. And to some extent, it's even musical, perhaps. If you listen to the soundtrack on Spotify, there's some songs that were created specifically for this film. And so I like how all encompassing it was. And I like how challenging it was. This movie, I will admit, was not made for me. It was not a movie that was made for me to look at it and say, "Oh, this is my movie of the year. This is my movie of the decade." But I think it will be for a lot of people. And I think it will be very empowering for a lot of women who need to hear the message that Barbie delivers. Um, but I also think that sometimes there are elements of the film where they maybe take it um, to a point where it ostracizes certain viewership. And I'm one of those people that's kind of right on the fence where I can see posts from people that are on the left side of the aisle and people that are on the right side of the aisle, if you know what I mean. I get both sides on my social feed, and I see a lot of people trying to protest and boycott this film. And I see a lot of people saying, you need to go see it. It will change your life. So I think it has a lot of potential to be super divisive at the end of the day. But the fact that it has all of those elements and it's also just such a well crafted, well constructed, well directed, well acted, well shot film makes it one of the greatest pieces of cinema of the year. And I was not expecting to say that about Barbie. I just wasn't. But they did a lot of really, really good things, and they did a lot of really challenging things. And I think at the end of the day, that's what cinema is supposed to be. I think that's what a movie is supposed to do. It's supposed to entertain you, but it's also supposed to stretch you and challenge you and make you think and make you have conversations with people. And I think Barbie is going to accomplish all of that for better or worse. So, um, I would probably give it around an 8 out of 10. That's kind of my initial thoughts, but it's a very enjoyable film, and I had a lot more laughs than I thought I was going to. So, it's a well-made film. I just don't know if it was made for me specifically.
I think that's a very fair way to put it. And I, I like that you mentioned both ends of the spectrum. How you get people who will shit all over something, and you get the boycott campaigns, or the lovely, you know, get the signature online petitions going, and
I mean, a lot of good it's gonna do. This movie set box office records in the opening weekend. It's already made its shooting budget back in one weekend, so I don't think a few butthurt people are really going to affect this movie's bottom line.
I'm just so annoyed that it seems like most fans fall into one of the two categories of movies in general, not just this movie. And it's like, hey, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. You know, go and see it for yourself and decide for yourself. Have your own opinion. Don't let someone else form it for you.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's what I'm going to challenge people to do if they are on the fence about it. I'm like, just go see it for yourself. At worst, you've spent 2 hours of your life sitting down in a comfortable chair and you're helping support, actors who some of them may not have made a whole lot of money, and as soon as they finished shooting, they had to go on strike. So, um at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to have a weekend or even a month of cinema that is quite as big as this weekend was with both Barbie and Oppenheimer. Because of the strike, I don't think we're gonna have a big box office weekend like we had for this one for a while now. So I'm glad that I got to see these on opening weekend. It was a fun experience, and it's one that I probably won't get to repeat for a while.
Yeah, there's definitely some movies to come, and people have been lucky to be able to see Barbie and Oppenheimer and Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones, and because there's going to be a stretch here where you're not going to see a bit here. Heck, there's very very few projects still in production right now. House of the Dragon and a few others, but most
You
mainstream
you
stuff not
you
so
wanna
much.
you wanna know what the funny thing is? It's like both ends of the spectrum because, House of the Dragon is a European, union, so they don't have to strike with SAG-AFTRA or AFTRA. I forget the pronunciation. I think it's AFTRA. They don't have to strike with the Screen Actors Guild. And then there is one small studio shooting not too far away from where I live. I think they're shooting in a little town called Waxahachie, Texas. And it is a TV series called The Chosen. Have you heard of The Chosen?
I have not.
It is basically a serialized look at the life of Christ. And um, they are shooting on a very small budget. They're shooting on a very small set, but apparently they are meeting all of the regulations necessary that are like met by the requirements of the Screen Actors Guild strike. So they filed for an appeal to be able to finish shooting before they send their actors on strike, and the appeal was wow. Hold on. We might need to edit that one too because that was
You all
awful.
right? Yeah, I got it time stamped.
And they were able to meet the qualifications that the Screen Actors Guild had, to allow them to continue their filming process and finish out their season before they send their actors on strike. So it's Europe and Jesus. Those dragons and Jesus are the only two things filming right now, basically.
Man, and then you got AI taking over Twitter or whatever it's called now. That's basically the Terminator all over again. And wow, it's almost like real life has become Hollywood.
Yeah, Cameron warned us about it, but we didn't listen.
Yeah, yeah, on multiple fronts in regards to that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anyways, man, 20 years ago, a movie that was being made about a Disney ride and wasn't even supposed to feature heavily its actual main character. Um, dare I say, kind of captured blockbuster imaginations at that time and set the world on fire. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Dude, in 2003, I really wasn't seeing movies in theaters all that much. I saw Chicken Run because it was a family film, and that was like 2001, 2002, something like that. And then I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in '05. But from like 2001 to 2005, there was a gap in there where I really didn't see movies on the big screen. So This wasn't one that I saw when all of the hype and all of the craze was taking the world by storm, but when I did finally get around to watching it, I was one of those people that was like, "What rock have I been hiding under?" What have I been waiting for all this time to be able to witness this brilliance of cinema? It has just about everything you could want. It has great writing, it has great characters, it's well cast, it's got great set pieces, it's got fun choreography with the different fight sequences. It's got a very compelling storyline that takes you on a fun ride from beginning to end. Um, you've got great leading characters that carry the story, but you've got great supporting characters like Zoe Saldana. Zoe freaking Saldana's in this movie as a supporting character, and she goes on to so much bigger and better a few years later with stuff like Star Trek and Avatar, and she gets her start as a character on Jack's adventures. And so to be able to look at this film from top to bottom and see all that it has going for it, this is one of those films that I would classify as lightning in a bottle. They did turn it into a franchise, but I don't know if any of them were truly able to master all of the different elements that this first film does in the way that it does. It's truly unique, and I don't think it's ever been replicated in 20 years.
I remember I did not get to see this movie in theaters when it came out. Uh, we had heard the word of mouth from its theatrical run. Um, I had a neighbor who lived down the hall from me who, um, I guess would it's kind of weird. Um, would go on at nauseum, just about how they didn't like how Johnny Depp was in the movie and how he came across. Keep in mind this is 20 years ago. But for me, all that did for me is make me want to see the movie more and what the hell they're talking about. And so we ended up renting it from Blockbuster. Um, I think we rented that and X2 on the same night. And I was just blown away, man. Was never one for pirates movies at all. I don't like the Goonies. That's for me. It wasn't like a go-to thing. And then I seen it, and one of the most captivating things about the movie is the score. Hans Zimmer gets you. The
Oh yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean theme is unforgettable. I think there's a lot of scores for movies that come out now where you can go, okay, that sounds cool during it, but 3 months from now, 3 years from now, a decade, 2 decades from now, are you going to be able to hum it in your head and know exactly where it's from? That's this score. And there's more than just the one, it's more than just the main theme. It's kind of like what would Star Wars be without the music of John Williams? Well,
Right.
what would Pirates be without the influence of Hans Zimmer on the material? It's just it's knockout level stuff, man.
Well, I'm with you that pirates were never the thing that I was into growing up. That was dinosaurs. And if you guys follow me at all on any social, which I suggest you do anyways, you know that I'm a big fan of the Jurassic franchise. I love the original Jurassic Park, and I think there's a lot of good things that you can take away from the other films in that franchise. But pirates were never really my thing. They weren't that thing. You know how kids, they grow up enjoying something like maybe cars or trains or monster trucks or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This generation is probably SpongeBob. Um, there's always like that one thing that a kid really, really is into. And some of it's abstract, like just dinosaurs. And then sometimes it's something really specific, like SpongeBob. But pirates were never really the thing. And being able to see such a historically accurate to a certain degree. Like, I'm not saying it's 100% accurate. I'm not saying everything about this is completely true to form and true to life, but to be able to examine like the classism and to be able to see that there's like civilized people, there's high society people that are higher up than them, like what Elizabeth is to Will at the beginning of this film, but then to also see that Will considers himself a step above another class like pirates are. And so to be able to examine that hierarchy and to see how everybody carries themselves is something that is only brought across through acting, very well acted, and something that's brought across through costumes. The costume design in this film is also unmatched, in my opinion. To be able to give you the impression of a, you know, early century, well-to-do Britishman living on the frontier of Caribbean islands to somebody who is more of a privateer who is living on rags and making his way, all of these things are portrayed so incredibly well that it's almost seamless. Like, unless you're paying attention to it, it kind of goes right by you. But when you do pay attention, you notice just how much attention to detail everybody is paying to every nuance of this film. When you've got Port Royal, it's very clean and very well to do. But then when you go someplace like Tortuga, there's mud and there's filth and there's the music and the rambunctiousness that gives you the impression that it's crowded and it's noisy and it's dirty. Like, all of those things come together in this one film, and it's mind-blowing when you go into that much detail of it.
So, did you watch this recently, or are you going off memory? That's nothing. That's not something we talked about. So,
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I watched it about a month ago during the time when it was around its original 20th anniversary. We're
yep.
about a month late. I think we watched it to celebrate it during its actual um, 20th anniversary, which was kind of mid to late June. So it's fairly recent, but I will admit that I just watched Dead Man's Chest like a couple of days ago in order to make sure that I was fresh on that one. So both of them relatively within the last few weeks. Why do you ask?
You mentioned the costumes, but the set design, even for back then, and the location shooting and how real it feels, and like you can picture yourself there with them, is fantastic. I actually almost jumped ahead of myself there. I was going to mention something about Dead Man's Chest and realized I had a note for the wrong movie in the wrong place. So,
Uh-oh.
but the set design in this is fantastic, man. I just can't get over how real it feels, and gritty, but yet also still not too overboard to not show, young teenagers, or slightly younger than that.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty safe for the whole family. Like, I would there's no cursing in this film. And that's really one thing that a lot of rather conservative families that I know of try to pay attention to, that and nudity. So when it comes to thematic elements or the scare factor, I don't think they really worry about that quite as much. And you don't really have either of those incorporated in this film all that much. So personally, I would show this movie to even a 6 to 8 year old. Like, yeah, they may get a little nervous of the skeletons that are walking around towards the end of the film, but that's why you're supposed to watch it with them as a parent. You're not supposed to just like turn them loose in a dark room and like, here, enjoy your nightmares. Like, you can talk them through it, you can process it with them. And this is definitely a family film, I feel like. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so great is it's accessible for families, but it's also something that a couple in their late 20s can sit down and watch over dinner, which is what my wife and I did. Like, we don't have a kid yet, but we were able to like be kids at heart for a couple of hours and enjoy the movie ourselves as well.
So, I mean, obviously, I think it's been pretty well established we really like this movie. So, what are some of the things that you love most about this movie?
Oh, I thought you were gonna like turn it on its head and be like, what are the things that you would critique about it? Like, is there anything about this movie we can shit on? Maybe we can do that in a second. Um, I would say I love the lore. I love being able to listen to pirates' tales and try to imagine them actually playing out. I like some of the storytelling that Mr. Gibbs does to kind of give you the idea of what it's like to live life on the high seas. I like the exposition of the cursed Aztec gold and not just hearing it get talked about, but also seeing it brought to life. I think that was one of the things that Pirates of the Caribbean did really, really well, particularly in this film. There's a lot of movies that will just show you a whole bunch of CGI and will show you a whole bunch of action, but it won't be very well written. I'm looking at you, Fast and the Furious. And then there are some movies that are very, very well written, but they're made on a low budget and you don't see a whole lot. And this film in particular is able to really, really strike that balance of giving you some really good storytelling, some really good exposition, but they don't just talk about it, they follow it up by showing you it. I would reference you to the dinner scene between Barbosa and Elizabeth. He talks about the terrible curse, but then as soon as she runs away from him and runs outside, you see the curse in action under the light of the moon. And so to not just talk about it, but to follow it up by showing the viewers that is something that I truly admire and do really love about this film.
I think it really is a character film to an extent. I know it might not feel that way, but you spend enough time with Jack to get an idea what he's about. You spend enough time with Will, enough time with Elizabeth, even enough time with Barbosa, as he's scene that you just brought up, the dinner scene there. Like you get an idea of what is motivating him, and it's not just power. It's he wants to feel again. Like that's deep.
Well, and I think that's what makes him such a compelling character is I don't know. I really have a hard time classifying him as a villain. Maybe at most an antagonist. Like he is definitely, by mutinying against Jack, who is supposed to be like the fan favorite character, he can be portrayed as an antagonist, but he's not seeking out to kill people. He's not seeking out, money and fortune and fame. He's leading his men to salvation, more or less. That's his end game. He wants to feel again. He wants his crew to return to normal. I think it exhibits great leadership and compassion for somebody that claims to be a pirate. And I think that's another thing that gives some depth to this film is it's just as easy to like Barbosa and what he's about as it is to like Jack and how much of a free spirit he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this film specifically, I'd still probably call Barbosa a villain, but that's just me.
In what
Uh,
sense though? In what sense?
well, I mean, he's willing to cut Elizabeth's throat at the end, so it's pretty villainous.
I just find that to be pirate superstition. He cut her hand last time and it didn't work. So he wants to be effective in what he does. And I think it shows what he's willing to do, like what lengths he's willing to go to in order to save the lives of his crew. I think everything that he's doing is with his return to normal and with his crew in mind. I don't think he's like deliberately out to murder people, but I think that he is being very intentional with what he needs to do in order to save his crew.
Yeah, that's true. It's also important to remember though that he did lead a mutiny that left poor Jack for dead, and
Because
karma.
he thought Jack was being ineffective.
So mutiny's the answer.
Yes. That is exactly what happens. It happens all the time in Star Trek. It happens all the time in different genres of films. This is not something that is unique to pirates. If the captain of the vessel is an ineffective leader, he gets usurped by somebody who is going to do the job.
Yeah, mine's more the leaving him on the island to starve to death.
He
Is it
he follows he follows the pirate code. That
uh,
that's what you do when you mutiny.
guidelines? Yeah, guidelines.
They're more like guidelines. Yes, I
It's
love that line, by the way.
Jeffrey
I love
Rush's
that line. It's fantastic. And the way that Elizabeth brings it back up when everybody hesitates to go and help, she's like, hang the rules. They're more like guidelines anyway. And somehow that convinces everybody. It's like, oh, I'm convinced. Okay, let's go do it. Like, it's just
um,
it's so entertaining. It's so entertaining.
the yeah, no, it's a fantastic film, and one of my favorite scenes in it is when Jack appears for the second time when he's gotten off the island again,
Yep.
and Barbossa's reaction. Not
He's like, you
possible.
again.
Not possible. Not probable, mate. Oh,
The
it's,
way he
it's so,
chooses semantics, the communications major in me loves that so much.
oh, man,
You
no.
you know that you're kind of beat in a word battle when you choose to argue over semantics rather than topic at hand. And so like when you're getting down to, nitpicking somebody's grammar or vocabulary, it's because you've got almost nothing left to stand on. But his reappearance and their fight scene, when we're talking about choreography, the fight scene between Jack and Will in the stable and the fight scene between Jack and Barbossa at the end, when they're both immortal and they're both ducking in and out of moonlight and the CGI keeps changing their appearance as they engage. That is just quite possibly one of the greatest single combat fights. Like if we ever do an episode that's just like the Hall of Fame of fight sequences, I would put that one right up there with Anakin versus Obi-Wan on Mustafar. That's how highly I think of that fight scene.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy it. There's a fight scene in the next movie that I can't wait to talk about either. The music cues in it are great. The lighting is fantastic, and just the whole way that it even leads to the fight. And you can always trust an honest man to be dishonest, honestly, all that stuff. It's just, oh my god. Dude, I just love this movie, and I could geek out about it so much more. And we had mentioned uh, with our Titanic episode, the possibility of Patreon content. And Zach and I haven't finalized what we're going to do for that yet. But I almost feel like at the end of the month, it'd be nice to go back and I don't know who would necessarily be involved with it because Zach and I have busy schedules, but to go back and just revisit each movie we did that month and add a little something that maybe we didn't have time for in the
Hmm.
episode. Um, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. I honestly, I don't have negatives when it comes to this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I feel like quality wise, it really holds up to that too. So,
That
uh,
that's the last point I would make before we go into our scores for this film is this movie came out in 2003 and it holds up with the CGI and the storytelling and the visual effects that you see in 2023. It really does. And for a movie to stand the test of time that well is truly impressive and is something that we don't see very often. If we go back and look at other movies that came out in 2003, they would look like they came out in 2003, but not Black Pearl. And that is definitely something worth celebrating.
couldn't agree more myself, man. Um, walk us through your scores, man. What were you thinking here?
Yeah. Yeah. So I gave it a 22 out of a 25 for the creativity which involves the story, that involves the writing, it involves the characters. And honestly, I only knocked a few off because technically this film is based on a ride. Even though there is so much more to this story that is fleshed out than a 10-minute boat ride at Disney, um, it's still slightly derivative. It's still slightly derivative. And there are a couple of moments with the whole back and forth of the island that I feel like couldn't we have kind of condensed that into like one thing rather than have two trips to that island? But it's like a very very tiny pacing thing in the grand scheme of this. Knocking off just a couple of points here and there is really the only thing I did. Quality, we've talked about the production, the directing, the acting. Those are all elements that's part of the quality component. Sound, I gave it another 22, just because as much as I do enjoy that Pirates theme, I do feel it gets overused a time or two. I do feel like we could come up with something that's a little bit different than the dun dun da da dun dun da da dun dun da 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 like 12 times in the movie. And so if it had been reduced to, maybe 8, 9, 10 times, I probably wouldn't have taken as much off of it. But again, it's a very tiny nitpick. The sound design, the clanging of the sabers, the soundtrack and the music, it's all just super up there. And then my enjoyment factor is a perfect 25 out of 25. I always enjoy this film. I never get tired of this film. As much as I, may take off a couple of points in creativity and a couple of points in sound, this is still a fan flipping tastic movie that is in my top 10 favorite films of all time. And it had been in my top 5 movies I'll never say no to. I've got a couple of others that are in that rotation now. But this film is just so, so good. And it's one of my absolute favorites. And based on the point score, I give it a 94 out of 100.
Hard to ask much better than that. I mean, there's only six more points left on the board to get, right? So, and when you have a movie score 94, I think you should be over the moon, because there's very few movies that are going to get scored 94 on here by either of us, I would assume.
Oh, easily.
So moving on to mine here, I had creativity at a 23, quality at a 23, and the quality thing I actually had to like look at The Curse of the Black Pearl and Dead Man's Chest together and try to figure out my score that way. Sound, I love the theme, and I think there's a lot of other subtle themes that don't get enough attention in the Pirates movies, and so there's not much better they could have done there. And yet, I don't think it's the level of, an Empire Strikes Back or a Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith in terms of the sound, where I think those movies are just over the top good, or The Dark Knight. So I had to take a point off for that. Enjoyment though, man. Like for me, it's still top 5 movie I will never say no to. It's incredible, and I was just thrilled to be able to sit down again and watch it.
So you gave it, by my math, a 95 then, correct?
Yes, sir.
95 for Sean, 94 for Zach. That gives it a aggregated score from the two of us, 94.5%. And the way that we grade things here on Flixbusters, it is most definitely a flick. And our criterion for another special category that we create, it has to be over 90% from the two of us, which it is at a 94.5. And we both voted off of the air and unanimously approved Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl for what Flixbusters dubs Hall of Fame status. That's right. It has been added to our Hall of Fame list with James Cameron's Titanic. Those are the only 2 films that we have put in there, and it may be a little while before we put another one in there based on some of the stuff that we still have to review coming up. Those 2 may be kind of sitting there for a little bit until we end up going back and reviewing something like Empire Strikes Back or The Dark Knight. So that is what currently sits as the Flixbusters Hall of Fame, but there probably will be more somewhere down the line. Just don't know when yet.
Yeah, you just never know. There's just a wild variety of movies coming at us very quickly, and looking forward to all of them. Don't forget that next week's episode will be Pirates of the Caribbean 2, A Dead Man's Chest, and then we follow that up with Oppenheimer, which will be a live stream. So check us out for that. It'll be fun being live with all you again.
I guess I'm gonna have to go and watch it one more time before we do that live episode. I like to be fairly fresh on movies that we're doing live episodes for. So I've got AMC A List. I've got something that's kind of like Movie Pass. I don't know. I think it's kind of a smaller franchise. There's something around here called Look Cinemas. Have you heard of them?
I have not.
They're a dine-in chain, and I think they've only got like 10 or 12 locations, but there's one location that's literally like 2 miles away from my house. Not even 2 miles. And I got like a season pass to be able to go to Look Cinemas, and so I've got a couple of different options to be able to go see it with, and I'll definitely be very fresh on it in time for that discussion. It's 3 hours long, and we'll do at least an hour long, probably closer to an hour 20, discussing that film in as much detail as we possibly can. Promise you it's going to be worth it. But in the meantime, be sure to use that hashtag FlixPix. Follow us here on the channel. Follow us over on Patreon as well. We are in the collaboration stages of what special content we're going to be putting out for you all. But as soon as we have it, it's better to be a subscriber so that you are one of the first people to see it. You can also find some of our personal socials in various places. I am at Zach the Voice, Zach the Voice. Sean, where can the folks at home keep up with you outside of this podcast?
I don't really have personal social media that I use very often. So number one place to keep up with us, patreon.com/Fandom Empire. Support the channel. We got so much stuff going there. And then on Twitter or whatever we're calling it now, it's at Fandom Empire Now, and you find a variety of things there. And also Legacy of Westeros, at Legacy Westeros on Twitter. More stuff coming there as well.
It's a great piece of content for those of you that are Game of Thrones fans. We've also got a Facebook group that is slowly growing for this Flixbusters pod. We'll post the prompts for those $15 Flix Picks options in that group, as well as some other places. So be sure to go follow us on all of those different areas, and be sure to stay tuned for our next exciting episode. We hit the high seas again, talking about Dead Man's Chest. But for Sean, I'm Zach, thanking you for tuning in this week, and we will see you next time right here on Flixbusters.